I'd like to welcome everybody to Check Your Shelf. This is Season 2. We're reading Catcher in the Rye. My name's Aaron. Some of y'all might know me by Gimme, but some of y'all might not know me at all. But I think it's really important that we know these books really intimately. So I'm gonna have to ask you to go check your shelf. Well. Looks like we finally reached the end for you, young Coalfield. Season 2, finale. Might be an extra long episode, I'm not really sure. I think we can burn through 23 pages pretty quick. Might be a short episode. Either way, we're about to see if Holden Caulfield is gonna finally unalive himself. I'm just kidding, I don't think he does. I think I'd remembered that, but we're gonna see how everything pans out for the young boy. If you'll remember last episode, we experienced the aftermath of a couple too many cocktails for a young teenager. Prank calling his date, Sally Hayes. He drunkenly called her up, started slurring and stumbling and yelling all kind of shit. Saw Holden sneak into his parents' house so he could share a couple moments with his sister Phoebe. And how Phoebe really started calling Holden on all his phony BS. Telling him to cut the crap, name something you care about, and he's having a little trouble thinking of anything. We find out that Holden saw a dead body a couple years ago when he was in school. And we find out what the Catcher in the Rye actually is. And it's, a dream job that Holden wishes he could have for the rest of his life, where he could just stand in the rye fields and catch the kids that were about to run off a cliff and just save their lives all day long. What a kid, right? But that's all I got to say, man. We're gonna keep it short and sweet. We're gonna get to the end of this book. I'm gonna give y'all a couple notes that I've written down along the way. So if you're having a good time, make sure you hit that Facebook group. You can join the Discord, follow me on YouTube, actually, subscribe, hit the bell or whatever these young kids be saying and shit. And you can also go to my Linktree. That's Linktr.ee/gimmedoses. You can see my website, my photography stuff, some music videos I've shot, etc. But I ain't gonna do too much more talking, man. Let's go on and get into this book. Let's get this shit finished, because next season, season 3, we got the Orwellian double feature. I was about to throw up 3 fingers, I don't know why. The double feature. We're gonna do Animal Farm and 1984 back to back for season 3, because they're both kind of, similar criticisms on like the man or the society or the state, whatever have you. But yeah, let's get into this shit, man. We starting on chapter 23. You're reading along on YouTube, we already got the PDF up for you so you can read along with us. So I highly suggest you subscribe and watch my pretty face and these big ass lips. I'm just kidding, they tiny. Anyway, love y'all. Let's get into this. Bye. Chapter 23. So the last chapter, like the last few words was so she was talking about like getting into a burping contest with or taking burping lessons from some chick, and then he thought he heard something but decided to go out to the living room and call up one of his old teachers, Mr. Antolini. So chapter 23 starts off. I made it very snappy on the phone because I was afraid my parents would barge in on me right in the middle of it. They didn't, though. Mr. Antolini was very nice. He said I could come right over if I wanted to. I think I probably woke he and his wife up because it took them a hell of a long time to answer the phone. The first thing he asked me was if anything was wrong, and I said no. I said I'd flunked out of Pensy, though. I thought I might as well tell him. He said, "Good God," when I said that. He had a good sense of humor and all. He told me to come right over if I felt like it. He was about the best teacher I ever had, Mr. Antolini. He was a pretty young guy, not much older than my brother DB, and you could kid around with him without losing your respect for him. He was the one that finally picked up that boy that jumped out the window I told you about, James Castle. Old Mr. Antolini felt his pulse and all, and then he took off his coat and put it over James Castle, carried him all the way to the infirmary. He didn't even give a damn if his coat got all bloody. When I got back to DB's room, old Phoebe had turned the radio on. This dance music was coming out. She had it turned on low though so the maid wouldn't hear it. You should have seen her. She was sitting smack in the middle of the bed, outside the covers, with her legs folded like one of those yogi guys. She was listening to the music. She kills me. Come on, you feel like dancing? I taught her how to dance and all when she was a tiny little kid. She was a very good dancer. I mean, I just taught her a few things. She learned it mostly by herself. You can't teach somebody how to really dance. You have shoes on, she said. I'll take them off, come on. She practically jumped off the bed, and then she waited while I took my shoes off, and then I danced with her for a little while. She's really damn good. I don't like people that dance with little kids because most of the time it looks terrible. I mean, if you're out at a restaurant somewhere and you see some old guy take his little kid out on the dance floor, they usually keep yanking the kid's dress up in the back by mistake, and the kid can't dance worth a damn anyway. It just looks terrible. But I don't do it out in public with Phoebe or anything. We just horse around in the house. It's different with her anyway because she can dance. She can follow anything you do. I mean, if you hold her in close as hell so that it doesn't matter that your legs are so much longer, she stays right with you. You can cross over or do some corny dips or even jitterbug a little and she stays right with you. You can even tango, for God's sake. We danced about 4 numbers. In between numbers, she's funny as hell. She stays right in position. She won't talk or anything. You both have to stay right in position and wait for the orchestra to start playing again. That kills me. You're not supposed to laugh or anything either. Anyway, we danced about 4 numbers, and then I turned off the radio. Old Phoebe jumped back in bed and got under the covers. I'm improving, aren't I? And how? That's a weird way to... I hate the 50s slang. I'm improving, and how? Oh my, how aren't you improving? My, how you're improving. Or whatever. You know what I mean. And how? I sat down... And how? I sat down next to her on the bed again. I was sort of out of breath. I was smoking so damn much I had hardly any wind. She wasn't even out of breath. Feel my forehead. Why? Feel it. Just feel it once. I felt it. I didn't feel anything though. Does it feel very feverish? She said. No, is it supposed to? Yes, I'm making it. Feel it again. I felt it again and I still didn't feel anything, but I said, I think it's starting to now. I didn't want her to get a goddamn inferiority complex. She nodded. I can make it go up over the thermometer. Thermometer? Who said so? Alice Holmberg showed me how. You cross your legs, hold your breath, and think of something very, very hot, like a radiator or something, and then your whole forehead gets so hot you can burn somebody's hand. That killed me. I pulled my hand away from her forehead like I was in terrific danger. Thanks for telling me. Oh, I wouldn't have burned your hand. I'd have stopped it before I got to shh. Then quick as hell, she sat way the hell up in bed. Scared the hell out of me when she did that. What's the matter? I said. The front door. It's them. I quick jumped up and ran over and turned off the light over the desk. Then I jammed out my cigarette on my shoe and put it in my pocket. Then I fanned the hell out of the air to get the smoke out. I shouldn't have even been smoking, for God's sake. Then I grabbed my shoes and got in the closet and shut the door. Boy, my heart was beating like a bastard. I heard my mother come in the room. Phoebe? Now stop that. I saw the light, young lady. Hello! I couldn't sleep. Did you have a good time? Marvelous, my mother said, but you can tell she didn't mean it. She doesn't enjoy herself much when she goes out. Why are you awake, may I ask? Were you warm enough? I was warm enough. I just couldn't sleep. Phoebe, have you been smoking a cigarette in here? Tell me the truth, please, young lady. What? You heard me. I just lit one for 1 second. I just took one puff and then I threw it out the window. Why, may I ask? I couldn't sleep. I don't like that, Phoebe. I don't like that at all. Do you want another blanket? No thanks. Good night. She was trying to get rid of her, you could tell. How was the movie? My mother said. Excellent, except Alice's mother. She kept leaning over and asking her if she felt grippy during the whole entire movie. We took a taxi home. Let me feel your forehead. I didn't catch anything. She didn't have anything. It was just her mother. Well, go to sleep now. How was your dinner? Lousy. You heard what your father said about using that word. What was so lousy about it? You had a lovely lamb chop. I walked all over Lexington Avenue, the lamb chop was all right, but Charlene always breathes on me whenever she puts something down. She breathes all over the food and everything. She breathes on everything. Starting to sound a little bit like Holden there, huh? Well, go to sleep. Give Mother a kiss. Did you say your prayers? I said them in the bathroom. Good night. Good night. Go right to sleep now. I have a splitting headache. She gets headaches quite frequently. She really does. Take a few aspirins. Holden will be home on Wednesday, won't he? So far as I know. Get under there now. Way down. I heard my mother go out and close the door. I waited a couple minutes, then I came out of the closet. I bumped smack into old Phoebe when I did. It was so dark and she was out of the bed and coming to tell me. I hurt you? Oh, you had to whisper now. Because they were both home? I gotta get a move on. I found the edge of the bed in the dark and sat down on it and started putting on my shoes. I was pretty nervous, I admit it. Don't go now. Wait till they're asleep. No. Now. Now's the best time. Beth. Now's the best time. She'll be in the bathroom and Daddy'll turn on the news or something. Now's the best time. I could hardly tie my shoelaces. I was so damn nervous. Not that they would have killed me or anything if they'd caught me home, but it would have been very unpleasant and all. Where the hell are you? I said to old Phoebe. It was so dark I couldn't see her. Here. She was standing right next to me. I didn't even see her. I got my damn bags at the station. Listen, you got any dough, Phoebe? I'm practically broke. Just my Christmas dough for presents and all. I haven't done any shopping at all yet. Oh. I didn't want to take her Christmas dough. You want some? I don't want to take your Christmas dough. I can lend you some. Then I heard her over at DB's desk opening a million drawers and feeling around with her hand. It was pitch black. It was so dark in the room. If you go away, you won't see me in the play. Her voice sounded funny when she said it. Yes, I will. I won't go away before that. You think I want to miss the play? What I'll do, I'll probably stay at Mr. Antolini's house till maybe Tuesday night, and then I'll come home if I get a chance. I'll phone you. Here. She was trying to give me the dough. She couldn't find my hand. Where? Then she put the dough in my hand. Hey, I don't need this. Just give me $2 is all. No kidding, here. I tried to give it back to her, but she wouldn't take it. You can take it all. You can pay me back. Just bring it to the play. How much is it, for God's sake? $8.85. 65 cents. I spent some. Then all of a sudden I started to cry. I couldn't help it. I did it so nobody could hear me, but I did it. Scared the hell out of old Phoebe when I started doing it, and she came over and tried to make me stop, but once you get started, you can't just stop on a goddamn dime. I was still sitting on the edge of the bed when I did it, and she put her whole arm around my neck, and I put my arm around her too, but I still couldn't stop for a long time. I thought I was gonna choke to death or something. Boy, I scared the hell out of old Phoebe. The damn window was open and everything. I could feel her shivering and all, because all she had on was her pajamas. I tried to make her get back in bed, but she wouldn't go. Finally, I stopped, but it certainly took me a long, long time. Then I finished buttoning my coat and all. I told her I'd keep in touch with her. She told me I could sleep with her if I wanted to, but I said no, that I'd better beat it. Mr. Antolini was waiting for me and all. Then I took my hunting hat out of my coat pocket and gave it to her. She likes those kind of crazy hats. She didn't want to take it, but I made her. I'll bet she slept with it on. She really likes those kinds of hats. And then I told her again I'd give her a buzz if I got a chance, and then I left. It was a hell of a lot easier getting out of the house than it was getting in for some reason. For one thing, I didn't give much of a damn anymore if they caught me. I really didn't. Figured if they caught me, they caught me. I almost wish they did in a way. I walked all the way downstairs instead of taking the elevator. I went down the back stairs. I nearly broke my neck on about 10 million garbage pails, but I got out all right. The elevator boy didn't even see me. He probably thinks I'm still up at the Dicksteins. A lot of redeeming qualities for Holden in this chapter, but I would like to point out, I think I mentioned at the end of the last episode, it is kind of weird that it feels like this is the most tragic thing on earth, right? When you have the foresight of being an adult, not this like angst-ridden teenager, you realize that, I mean, you might get grounded for like a week, like it'll be fine. And he even mentions it, he's like, it's not like they'll kill me, but it'll be surely be unpleasant. And I just think it's funny that in his brain, this is enough for him to, this is a very triggering event to the point where he breaks down and cries and has to have his younger sister console him, He's finally reaching some sort of breaking point. Not today, bug. I don't think it's the same bug every time, but it's like every time I press record, somebody comes out of somewhere and just starts flying around the room. Crazy. Chapter 24. Mr. and Mrs. Antolini had this very swanky apartment over on Sutton Place, with 2 steps that you go down to get into the living room, and a bar and all. I'd been there quite a few times because after I left Elkton Hills, Mr. Antolini came up to our house for dinner quite frequently to find out how I was getting along. He wasn't married then. Then when he got married, I used to play tennis with he and Mrs. Antolini quite frequently out at the Westside Tennis Club in Forest Hills, Long Island. Mrs. Antolini belonged there. She was lousy with dough. She was about 60 years older than Mr. Antolini, but they seemed to get along quite well. For one thing, they were both very intellectual, especially Mr. Antolini, except that he was more witty than intellectual when you were with him, sort of like DB. Mrs. Antolini was mostly serious. She had asthma pretty bad. They both read all of DB's stories, Mrs. Antolini too. And when DB went to Hollywood, Mr. Antolini phoned him up and told him not to go. Whoa, too big. Maybe not. Had to was realizing that might have been a little too big for a little too small for the people watching on YouTube, so I had to bump it up. She had asthma pretty bad. They both read all of DB's stories, Mrs. Antolini too. And when DB went to Hollywood, Mr. Antolini phoned him up and told him not to go. He went anyway though. Mr. Antolini said that anybody that could write like DB had no business going out to Hollywood. It's exactly what I said practically. I would have walked down to their house because I didn't want to spend any of Phoebe's Christmas dough that I didn't have to, but I felt funny when I got outside, sort of dizzy. So I took a cab. I didn't want to, but I did. I had a hell of a time even finding a cab. Old Mr. Antolini answered the door when I rang the bell. After the elevator boy finally let me up, the bastard, he had on his bathrobe and slippers and had a highball in one hand. He was a pretty sophisticated guy and he was a pretty heavy drinker. Holden, my boy. My God, he's grown another 20 inches. Fine to see you. How are you, Mr. Antolini? How's Mrs. Antolini? We're both just dandy. Let's have that coat. He took my coat off and hung it up. I expected to see a day-old infant in your arms. Nowhere to turn, snowflakes in your eyelashes. He's a very witty guy sometimes. He turned around and yelled out to the kitchen, Lillian, how's the coffee coming? Lillian was Mrs. Antolini's first name. It's all ready. Is that Holden? Hello, Holden. Hello, Mrs. Antolini. You were always yelling when you were there. It's because the both of them were never in the same room at the same time. It was sort of funny. Sit down, Holden, Mr. Antolini said. You could tell he was a little oiled up. The room looked like they just had a party. Glasses were all over the place and dishes with peanuts in them. Excuse the appearance of the place. We've been entertaining some buffalo friends of Mrs. Antolini's. Some buffaloes, as a matter of fact. I laughed, and Mrs. Antolini yelled something into me from the kitchen, but I couldn't hear her. What'd she say? She said not to look at her when she comes in. She's just a rose from the sack. Have a cigarette. Are you smoking now? Thanks. I took a cigarette from the box he offered me. Just once in a while. I'm a moderate smoker. I'll bet you are. So, you and Pensy are no longer one. He always said things that way. Sometimes it amused me a lot, and sometimes it didn't. Yeah, thanks for that fucking essential input there, Holden. He sort of did it a little bit too much. I don't mean he was witty or anything. I don't mean he wasn't witty or anything, he was. But sometimes it gets on your nerves when somebody's always saying things like, so you and Pensy are no longer one. DB does it sometimes too. What was the trouble? Mr. Antolini asked me. How'd you do in English? I'll show you the door in short order if you flunked English, you little ace composition writer. Oh, I passed English all right. It was mostly literature, though. I only wrote about 2 compositions the whole term. I flunked oral expression, though. They had this course you had to take, oral expression, that I flunked. Flunked. That was a hard word for me to say for some reason. Why? Oh, I don't know. I didn't feel like going into it. I was still feeling sort of dizzy or something, and I had a hell of a headache all of a sudden. I really did. But you could tell he was interested, so I told him a little bit about it. It's this course where each boy in class has to get up in class and make a speech. You know, spontaneous and all. And if the boy digresses at all, you're supposed to yell, digression, as fast as you can. It just about drove me crazy. I got an F in it. That makes a lot of sense, actually. That Holden would fail a class like this. It makes a lot of sense. I got an F in it. Why? Oh, I don't know. That digression business got on my nerves. I don't know. The trouble with me is I like it when somebody digresses. It's more interesting and all. You don't care to have somebody stick to the point when he tells you something? Oh, sure. I like somebody to stick to the point and all, but I don't like them to stick too much to the point. I don't know. I guess I don't like it when somebody sticks to the point all the time. The boys that got the best marks in oral expression were the ones that stuck to the point all the time. I admit it. But there was this one boy, Richard Kinsella. He didn't stick to the point too much, and they were always yelling digression at him. It was terrible. Because in the first place, he was a very nervous guy. I mean, he was a very nervous guy. And his lips were always shaking whenever it was his time to make a speech, and you could hardly hear him if you were sitting way in the back of the room. When his lips sort of quit shaking a little bit, though, I liked his speeches better than everybody else's. He practically flunked the course too, though. He got a D+ because they kept yelling digression at him all the time. For instance, he made this speech about this farm his father bought in Vermont, and they kept yelling digression at him the whole time he was making it. And this teacher, Mr. Vinson, gave him an F on it because he hadn't told what kind of animals and vegetables and stuff grew on the farm and all. What he did was, Richard Kinsella, he'd start telling you about that stuff, then all of a sudden he'd start telling you about this letter his mother got from his uncle and how his uncle got polio when he was 42 years old and how he wouldn't let anybody come to see him in the hospital because he didn't want anybody to see him with a brace on. It didn't have much to do with the farm, I admit it, but it was nice. It's nice when somebody tells you about their uncle, especially when they start out telling you about their father's farm and then all of a sudden get more interested in their uncle. I mean, it's dirty to keep yelling digression at him when he's all nice and excited. I don't know, it's hard to explain. God, man, Holden has got to be some sort of neurodivergent, right? I mean, my God, man, maybe 17-year-olds just don't understand how to speak yet. That exhausted me, reading that. Like, I get I get the sort of imagery and the sort of like emotions we're supposed to feel behind it and why he's rambling about this, right? It's sort of a glimpse into Holden having like empathy and like compassion for humanity, which is rare for the kid. But it has happened a couple times. And when he does start feeling that way, he tends to go on these like big ass, like rants, I guess. But I didn't feel too much like trying, so it's hard to explain. I didn't feel too much like trying either. For one thing, I had this terrific headache all of a sudden, and I wish to God old Mrs. Antolini would come in with the coffee. That's something that annoys the hell out of me. I mean, if somebody says the coffee's all ready and it isn't. I don't remember her saying the coffee's ready. So I'm scrolling up. Yep, how's the coffee coming? It's all ready. Yep, she said it. Fuck that bitch, there should have been coffee. Holden. I mean, if somebody says the coffee's all ready and it isn't. Holden. One short, faintly stuffy, pedagogical? Hey, Dr. Google. Hey, Dr. Google. What the fuck does that mean? What the fuck does that mean? And I said, hey, Dr. Google. Pedagogical. Fuck you. Pedagogical, relating to teaching. One short, faintly stuffy question regarding teaching. Don't you think there's a time and place for everything? Don't you think if someone starts out to tell you about his father's farm, he should stick to his guns, then get around to telling you about his uncle's brace? Or if his Uncle Brace is such a provocative subject, shouldn't he have selected it in the first place as his subject, not the farm? I didn't feel much like thinking and answering and all. I had a headache and I felt lousy. I even had sort of a stomach ache, if you want to know the truth. I don't believe him. Yes, I don't know, I guess he should. I guess he should have picked his uncle as a subject instead of the farm if that interested him the most. But what I mean is, lots of time you don't know what interests you most until you start talking about something that doesn't interest you most. I mean, you can't help it sometimes. So this is actually something that happens to Holden a lot, right? He'll start off talking about one thing and then get stuck on another thing for like 4 or 5 sentences and just keep rambling about it. I think the piano guy was one, and when he was on the date with that chick, he kept talking about the other musician in the band or whatever. So, just interesting. But what I mean is, lots of time you don't know what interests you until you talk about what doesn't interest you most. I mean, you can't help it sometimes. What I think is, you're supposed to leave somebody alone if he's at least being interesting and he's getting all excited about something. I like it when somebody gets excited about something. It's nice. You just didn't know his teacher, Mr. Vincent. He could drive you crazy sometimes, him and the goddamn class. I mean, he'd keep telling you to unify and simplify all the time. Some things you just can't do that to. I mean, you can't hardly ever simplify and unify something just because somebody wants you to. You didn't know this guy, Mr. Vincent. I mean, he was very intelligent and all, but you could tell he didn't have too much brains. Coffee, gentlemen, finally, Mrs. Antolini said. She came in carrying this tray with coffee and cakes and stuff on it. Holden, don't you even peek at me, I'm a mess. Hello, Mrs. Antolini. I started to get up and all, but Mr. Antolini got a hold of my jacket and pulled me back down. Old Mrs. Antolini's hair was full of those iron curler jobs, and she didn't have any lipstick or anything on. She didn't look too gorgeous. She looked pretty old and all. I'll leave this right here. Just dive in, you two. She put the tray down on the cigarette table, pushing all these glasses out of the way. And how's your mother, Holden? She's fine, thanks. I haven't seen her too recently, but the last Darling, if Holden needs anything, everything's in the linen closet, the top shelf. I'm going to bed. I'm exhausted. Oh, I thought the husband was about to interrupt his ass. No, she's interrupting him. She's fine, thanks. I haven't seen her too recently, but the last Darling, if Holden needs anything, everything's in the linen closet, top shelf. I'm going to bed. I'm exhausted. He looked it too. Can you boys make up the couch by yourselves? We'll take care of everything. You run along to bed. He gave Mrs. Antolini a kiss and she said goodbye to me and went in the bedroom. They were always kissing each other a lot in public. I had part of a cup of coffee and about half of some cake that was hard as a rock. All old Mr. Antolini had was another highball though. And he makes them strong too, you could tell. He may get to be an alcoholic if he doesn't watch his step. I had lunch with your dad a couple weeks ago. Did you know that? No, I didn't. You're aware, of course, that he's terribly concerned about you. I know it. I know he is. Apparently, before he phoned me, he just had a long, rather harrowing letter from your latest headmaster to the effect that you were making absolutely no effort at all. Cutting classes, coming unprepared to all your classes, in general being an all-around... I didn't cut any classes. You weren't allowed to cut any. There were a couple of them I couldn't even attend once in a while, like that oral expression I told you about, but I didn't cut any. I didn't feel at all like discussing it. The coffee made my stomach feel a little bit better, but I still had this awful headache. Mr. Antolini lit another cigarette. He smoked like a fiend. Then he said, frankly, I don't know what the hell to say to you, Holden. I know, I'm very hard to talk to. I realize that. I have a feeling that you're riding for some kind of terrible, terrible fall, but I don't honestly know what kind. Are you listening to me? Yes. You could tell he was trying to concentrate and all. It may be the kind where, at the age of 30, you sit in the bar, hating everybody who comes in, looking as if he might have played football in college. Then again, you may pick up just enough education to hate people who say, it's a secret between he and I, or you may end up in some business office throwing paper clips at the nearest stenographer. I just don't know. But do you know what I'm driving at all? Yes, sure. I did too. But you're wrong about that hating business. I mean, about hating football players and all. You really are. I don't hate too many guys. What I may do, I may hate them for a little while, like this guy Stradlater I knew at Pensy, and this other boy, Robert Ackley. I hated them once in a while, I admit it, but it doesn't last too long. After a while, if I didn't see them, if they didn't come in the room, or if I didn't see them in the dining room for a couple of meals, I sort of missed them. Mr. Antolini didn't say anything for a while. He got up and got another hunk of ice and put it in his drink, and then he sat down again. You could tell he was thinking. I kept wishing, though, that he'd continue the conversation in the morning instead of now, but he was hot. People are mostly hot to have a discussion when you're not. Alright, listen to me a minute now. I may not word this as memorably as I'd like to, but I'll write you a letter about it in a day or two, and then you can get it all straight. But listen now anyway. He started concentrating again, and then he said, this fall I think you're riding for is a special kind of fall, a horrible kind. The man falling isn't permitted to feel or hear himself hit the bottom. He just keeps falling and falling. The whole arrangement's designed for men who at some time or another in their lives were looking for something their own environment couldn't supply them with. Or they thought their own environment couldn't supply them with. So they gave up looking. They gave it up before they ever really even got started. You follow me? I think that's kind of symbolic for the whole theme of the book, right? Yeah, that was a powerful little monologue he did right there. I like that a lot. So they gave up looking. They gave it up before they ever really even got started. You follow me? Yes, sir. You sure? Yes. He got up and poured some more booze in his glass, and then he sat down again. He didn't say anything for a long time. I don't want to scare you, but I can very clearly see you dying nobly, one way or another, for some highly unworthy cause." He gave me a funny look. "If I write something down for you, will you read it carefully and keep it?" "Yes, sure." I did too. I still have the paper he gave me. He went over to this desk on the other side of the room and, without sitting down, wrote something on a piece of paper. And then he came back and sat down with the paper in his hand. Oddly enough, this wasn't written by a practicing poet. It was written by a psychoanalyst named William Steckel. Here's what he... Oh, what? Oh, shit. I thought this was still whole. I missed that fucking quotation mark. Oddly enough, this wasn't written by a practicing poet. It was written by a psychoanalyst named William Steckel. Here's what he... Are you still with me? Yes, sure, I am. Here's what he said. "The mark of the immature man is that he wants to die nobly for a cause, while the mark of the mature man is that he wants to live humbly for one." I like that a lot. Immature men want to die nobly for a cause. A mature man wants to live humbly for the cause. I like that. He leaned over and handed it to me. I read it right when he gave it to me, and then I thanked him and all and put it in my pocket. It was nice of him to go through all that trouble. It really was. The thing was, though, I didn't feel much like concentrating. Boy, I felt so damn tired all of a sudden. You could tell he wasn't tired, though. He was pretty oiled up for one thing. I think that one of these days, you're gonna have to find out where you want to go, and then you've got to start going there. But immediately. You can't afford to lose a minute. Not you. I nodded because he was looking right at me and all, but I wasn't too sure what he was talking about. I was pretty sure I knew, but I wasn't too positive at the time. I was too damn tired. "And I hate to tell you," he said, "but I think that once you have a fair idea where you want to go, your first move will be to apply yourself in school. You'll have to. You're a student. Whether the idea appeals to you or not, you are in love with knowledge. And I think you'll find, once you get past all the Mr. Vinces and their oral Mr. Vincents. He meant all the Mr. Vincents, not all the Mr. Vinces. I shouldn't have interrupted him, though. All right, the Mr. Vincents. Once you get past all the Mr. Vincents, you're going to start getting closer and closer. That is, if you want to. And if you look for it and wait for it. To the kind of information that will be very, very dear to your heart. Among other things, you'll find that you're not the first person who was ever confused and frightened and sickened by human behavior. You're by no means alone on that score. You'll be excited and stimulated to know. Many, many men have been just as troubled morally and spiritually as you are right now. Happily, some of them kept records of their troubles. You'll learn from them if you want to. Just as someday, if you have something to offer, someone will learn something from you. It's a beautiful, reciprocal arrangement. And it is an education. It's history. It's poetry. He stopped and took a big drink out of his highball, and then he started again. Boy, he was really hot. I was glad I didn't try to stop him or anything. I'm not trying to tell you that only educated and scholarly men are able to contribute something valuable to the world. It's not so, but I do say that educated and scholarly men, if they're brilliant and creative to begin with, which unfortunately is rarely the case, tend to leave infinitely more valuable records behind them than men do who are merely brilliant and creative. They tend to express themselves more clearly, and they usually have a passion for following their thoughts through to the end. And most important, 9 times out of 10, They have more humility than the unscholarly thinker. Do you follow me at all? Yes, sir. He didn't say anything again for quite a while. I don't know if you've ever done it, but it's sort of hard to sit around waiting for somebody to say something when they're thinking and all. It really is. I kept trying not to yawn. It wasn't that I was bored or anything, I wasn't, but I was so damn sleepy all of a sudden. Something else an academic education will do for you, if you go along with it any considerable distance, it'll begin to give you an idea what size mind you have, what it'll fit, and maybe what it won't. After a while, you'll have an idea what kind of thoughts your particular size mind should be wearing. For one thing, it may save you an extraordinary amount of time trying on ideas that don't suit you, aren't becoming to you. You'll begin to know your true measurements and dress your mind accordingly. Then, all of a sudden, I yawned. What a rude bastard, but I couldn't help it. Mr. Antolini just laughed, though. Come on, he said and stood up. We'll fix up the couch for you. I followed him and he went over to this closet and tried to take down some sheets and blankets and stuff that was on the top shelf, but he couldn't do it with his highball glass in his hand, so he drank it and then put the glass down on the floor, and then he took the stuff down. I helped him bring it over to the couch. We both made the bed together. He wasn't too hot at it. He didn't tuck anything in very tight. I didn't care though. I could have slept standing up, I was so tired. How were all your women? They're okay. I was being a lousy conversationalist, but I didn't feel like it. How's Sally? He knew old Sally Hayes. He knew old Sally Hayes. I had introduced him once. She's all right. I had a date with her this afternoon. Boy, it seemed like 20 years ago. We don't have too much in common anymore. Hell of a pretty girl. What's that other girl? What about that other girl? The one you told me about in Maine? Oh, Jane Gallagher. She's all right. I'm probably going to give her a buzz tomorrow. We were all done making up the couch by then. It's all yours. I don't know what the hell you're going to do with those legs of yours. That's all right. I'm used to short beds. Thanks a lot, sir. You and Mrs. Antolini really saved my life tonight. Well, you know where the bathroom is. If there's anything you want, just holler. I'll be in the kitchen for a while. Will the light bother you? Oh, heck no. Thanks a lot. All right. Good night, handsome. Good night, sir. Thanks a lot. He went out into the kitchen and I went into the bathroom and got undressed and all. I couldn't brush my teeth because I didn't have my toothbrush with me. I didn't have any pajamas either, and Mr. Antolini forgot to lend me some, so I just went back in the living room and turned off this little lamp next to the couch, and then I got in bed with just my shorts on. It was way too short for me, the couch, but I really could have slept standing up without batting an eyelash. I laid awake for just a couple of seconds, thinking about all that stuff that Mr. Antolini had told me, about finding out the size of your mind and all. He was a pretty smart guy, but I couldn't keep my goddamn eyes open and I fell asleep. Then something happened. I don't even like to talk about it. I woke up all of a sudden. I don't know what time it was or anything, but I woke up. I felt something on my head. Some guy's hand. Boy, it really scared the hell out of me. What it was Mr. Antolini's hand. What he was doing was, he was sitting on the floor right next to the couch in the dark and all, and he was sort of petting me or patting me on the goddamn head. Boy, I'll bet I jumped about 1,000 feet. What the hell are you doing? Nothing, I'm simply sitting here, What are you doing, anyway? I didn't know what the hell to say. I mean, I was embarrassed as hell. How about keeping your voice down? I'm simply sitting. I have to go, anyway. Boy, was I nervous. I started putting on my damn pants in the dark. I could hardly get them on, I was so damn nervous. I know more damn perverts at school and all than anybody you ever met. and they're always being perverty when I'm around. You have to go where? He was trying to act very goddamn casual and cool and all, but he wasn't any too goddamn cool, take my word. I left my bags and all at the station. I think I'd better go down and get them. I have all my stuff in them. They'll be there in the morning. Now go back to bed. I'm going to bed myself. What's the matter with you? Nothing's the matter. It's just that all my money and stuff's in one of my bags. I'll be right back. I'll get a cab and I'll be right back. Boy, I was falling all over myself in the dark. The thing is, it isn't mine. The money, it's my mother's and I... Don't be ridiculous, Holden. Get back in that bed. I'm going to bed myself. The money will be there, safe and sound. No kidding. I gotta get going, I really do. I was damn near all dressed already, except that I couldn't find my tie. I couldn't remember where I'd put my tie. I put on my jacket and all without it. Old Mr. Antolini was sitting now in the big chair, a little ways away from me, watching me. It was dark and all, and I couldn't see him so hot, but I knew he was watching me all right. He was still boozing too. I could still see his trusty highball glass in his hand. You were a very, very strange boy. I know it. I didn't even look around much for my tie, so I went without it. Goodbye, sir. Thanks a lot, no kidding. He kept walking right behind me when I went to the front door. And when I rang the elevator bell, he stayed in the damn doorway. All he said was that business about my being a very, very strange boy again. Strange my ass. Then he waited in the doorway and all till the goddamn elevator came. I never waited so long for an elevator in my whole goddamn life, I swear. I didn't know what the hell to talk about while I was waiting for the elevator, and he kept standing there, so I said, I'm gonna start reading some good books. I really am. I mean, you had to say something. It was very embarrassing. You grab your bags and scoot right on back here again. I'll leave the door unlatched. Thanks a lot. Goodbye. The elevator was finally there. I got in and went down. Boy, I was shaking like a madman. I was sweating too. When something perverty like that happens, I start sweating like a bastard. That kind of stuff's happened to me about 20 times since I was a kid. I can't stand it. Holy shit. Oh, man. Now we can kind of see why the kid's such a fucking mess, huh? I mean, he finally gets some really good advice from this dude. I mean, the size of the brain thing was really good. That other thing that I said that was good was also good that I can't remember, and I don't want to read while I'm trying to talk because that will make my tongue do dumb things. So we got this guy who, you know, finally seems to be taking Holden at face value and treating him right and treating him like an adult and giving him direction and trajectory and now look, you know, holy shit. Got a little rapey. Jeez. Poor kid. 20 times in 17 years. Holden do be lying a lot. So maybe it's not 20, but I believe him on that one. Chapter 25. Is this the last chapter? We only got about 11 pages left. Chapter 25. When I got outside, it was just getting light out. It was pretty cold too, but it felt good because I was sweating so much. I didn't know where the hell to go. I didn't want to go to another hotel and spend all of Phoebe's dough, so finally, all I did was walk over to Lexington and took the subway down to Grand Central. My bags were there and all, and I figured I'd sleep in that crazy waiting room where all the benches are, so that's what I did. It wasn't too bad for a while because there weren't many people around and I could stick my feet up, but I don't feel much like discussing it. It wasn't too nice. Don't ever try it. I mean it. It'll depress you. I only slept till around 9 o'clock because a million people started coming in the waiting room and I had to take my feet down. I can't sleep so hot if I have to keep my feet on the floor, so I sat up. I still had that headache and it was even worse. And I think I was more depressed than I ever was in my whole life. I didn't want to, but I started thinking about Mr. Antolini and wondered what the hell he'd tell Mrs. Antolini when she saw I hadn't slept there or anything. That part didn't worry me too much, because I knew Mr. Antolini was very smart and that he could make up something to tell her. I could tell her I'd gone home or something. That part didn't worry me much, but what did worry me was the part about how I'd woke up and found him patting me on the head and all. I mean, I wondered if maybe I was just wrong about thinking he was making a flitty pass at me. I wondered if maybe he just liked to pat guys on the head when they're asleep. I mean, how can you tell about that stuff for sure? You can't. I even started wondering if maybe I should have gotten my bags and gone back to his house the way I said I would. I mean, I started thinking that even if he was a flit, certainly he'd been very nice to me. I thought how he hadn't minded it when I'd called him so late, and how he'd told me to come right over if I felt like it, and how he went through all that trouble giving me that advice about finding out the size of your mind and all, and how he was the only guy that even gone near that boy James Castle I told you about when he was dead. I thought about all that stuff, and the more I thought about it, the more depressed I got. I mean, that is pretty crazy that, you know, you can, I mean, it didn't seem life-threatening by any means, but it's certainly a traumatizing event that just happened to the kid, and now he feels bad and is starting to even, you know, wonder if he should have gone back because, well, he did treat me nice, you know, da-da-da-da-da. So it's easy to kind of see how these sorts of things can get out of hand even today, so. Harley? What are you doing, baby? What are you meowing at out there? You turning into a werecat? Are you turning into a were-kitty? Hi, baby. Do you see say hi to the camera? Look. Stupid microphone blocking you, huh? Look at, I'm so cute. Yeah, that's the phony counter. You see it? Isn't that so cool? How many times he says phony? Huh? I love my cat. The more I started thinking about it, the more depressed I got. I mean, I started thinking maybe I should have gone back to his house. Maybe he was only patting my head just for the hell of it. The more I thought about it, though, the more depressed and screwed up about it I got. What made it even worse, my eyes were sore as hell. They felt sore and burny from not getting too much sleep. Besides that, I was sort of getting a cold, and I didn't even have a goddamn handkerchief with me. I had some in my suitcase, but I didn't feel like taking it out of that strong box and opening it up right in public and all. God, what a trivial thing to do. Like, that's so strange to me that that's something you didn't feel like doing. Maybe suitcases and shit were way worse in the 50s, but seems like that would have only taken 15 seconds. And you were complaining about it, so get it handled. There was this magazine that somebody had left on the bench next to me, so I started reading it, thinking it would make me stop thinking about Mr. Antolini and a million other things for at least a little while, but this damn article I started reading made me almost feel worst. This damn article I started reading made me feel almost worse. It was all about hormones. It described how you should look, your face and eyes and all, if your hormones were in good shape. And I didn't look that way at all. I looked exactly like the guy in the article with lousy hormones. So I started getting worried about my hormones. Then I read this other article about how you can tell if you have cancer or not. It said if you had any sores in your mouth that didn't heal pretty quickly, it was a sign that you probably had cancer. I'd had this sore on the inside of my lip for about 2 weeks, so I figured I was getting cancer. That magazine was some little cheerer-upper. I finally quit reading it and went outside for a walk. I figured I'd be dead in a couple of months because I had cancer. I really did. I was even positive I would be. It certainly didn't make me feel too gorgeous. It sort of looked like it was gonna rain, but I went for this walk anyway. For one thing, I figured I ought to get some breakfast. I wasn't at all hungry, but I figured I ought to at least eat something. I mean, at least get something with some vitamins in it. So I started walking way over east where the pretty cheap restaurants are because I didn't want to spend a lot of dough. Interesting that after he had that like kind of harrowing, humbling experience with Phoebe, now he's kind of changed his entire outlook on spending money when it's hers. You know what I'm saying? He really does seem to value... I don't know if it's Phoebe's opinion of him, but it seems that everything that comes from Phoebe is almost like holy to him, including her, you know, her advice and her words, even if they were similar to somebody else who had given them similar advice to him earlier in the book. While I was walking, I passed these two guys that were unloading this big Christmas tree off a truck. One guy kept saying to the other guy, "Hold the son of a bitch up! Hold it up, for Christ's sake!" That certainly was a gorgeous way to talk about a Christmas tree. Sort of funny though in an awful way, and I started to sort of laugh. It was about the worst thing I could have done because the minute I started to laugh, I thought I was gonna vomit. I really did. I even started to, but it went away. I don't know why. I mean, I hadn't eaten anything unsanitary or anything like that, and usually I have quite a strong stomach. Anyway, I got over it, and I figured I'd feel better if I had something to eat, so I went in this very cheap-looking restaurant and had donuts and coffee. Only I didn't eat the donuts. I couldn't swallow them too well. The thing is, if you get depressed about something, it's hard as hell to swallow. The waiter was very nice though. He took them back without charging me. I just drank the coffee. Then I left and started walking over towards Fifth Avenue. It was Monday and all, and pretty near Christmas, and all the stores were open, so it wasn't too bad walking on Fifth Avenue. It was fairly Christmassy, and all those scraggy looking Santa Clauses were standing on corners ringing those bells, and the Salvation Army girls, the ones that don't wear any lipstick or anything, they were tinging their bells too. I sort of kept looking around for those two nuns that I had met at breakfast the day before, but I didn't see them. I knew I wouldn't because they told me they'd come to New York to be school teachers, but I kept looking for them anyway. Another great example of Holden kind of hyper-fixating on nostalgia, right? So he had a monumental sort of occasion happen in his life, and now he's hyper-obsessed with it. Looking for them even though he knows better. Anyway, it was pretty Christmassy all of a sudden. A million little kids were downtown with their mothers, getting on and off buses and coming in and out of stores. I wished old Phoebe was around. She's not little enough anymore to go stark staring mad at the toy department, but she enjoys horsing around and looking at the people. The Christmas before last, I took her downtown shopping with me. We had a hell of a time. I think it was in Bloomingdale's. We went to the shoe department and we pretended that she, old Phoebe, wanted to get a pair of those very high storm shoes, the kind that have about 1 million holes to lace up. We had the poor salesman guy going crazy. Old Phoebe tried on about 20 pairs, and each time the poor guy had to lace one shoe all the way up. It was a dirty trick, but it killed old Phoebe. We finally bought a pair of moccasins and charged them. Oh, I guess like on a credit card. We finally bought a pair of moccasins and charged them. The salesman was very nice about it. I think he knew we were horsing around because old Phoebe always starts giggling. Anyway, I kept walking and walking up Fifth Avenue without any tie on or anything. And then all of a sudden, something very spooky started happening. Every time I came to the end of a block and stepped off the goddamn curb, I had this feeling I'd never get to the other side of the street. Damn, that's like some Freddy Krueger shit, bro. Every time I came to the end of a block and stepped off the goddamn curb, I had this feeling I'd never get to the other side of the street. I thought I'd just go down, 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 and nobody'd ever see me again. Boy, did it scare me. You can't imagine. I started sweating like a bastard. My whole shirt and underwear and everything. Then I started doing something else. Every time I'd get to the end of a block, I'd make believe I was talking to my brother Allie. I'd say to him, Allie, don't let me disappear. Allie, don't let me disappear. Allie, don't let me disappear. Please, Allie. And then when I'd reach the other side of the street without disappearing, I'd thank him. And then it would start all over again as soon as I got to the next corner, but I kept going and all. I was sort of afraid to stop, I think. I don't remember, to tell you the truth. I know I didn't stop till I was way up in the 60s, past the zoo and all. Then I sat down on this bench. I could hardly get my breath and I was still sweating like a bastard. I'd sat there, I guess, for about an hour. Finally, what I decided to do, I decided I'd go away. I decided I'd never go home again, and I'd never go away to another school again. I decided I'd just see old Phoebe and sort of say goodbye to her and all, and give her back her Christmas dough, and then I'd start hitchhiking my way out west. What I'd do, I figured I'd go down to the Holden tunnel and bum a ride, and then I'd bum another one and another one and another one. And in a few days, I'd be somewhere out west where it was very pretty and sunny and where nobody'd know me, and I'd get a job. I figured I could get a job at a filling station somewhere putting gas and oil in people's cars. I didn't care what kind of job it was, though, just so people didn't know me and I didn't know anybody. I thought what I'd do was I'd pretend I was one of those deaf mutes. That way I wouldn't have to... That's so funny. I'd pretend I was disabled so I wouldn't have to talk to somebody, is basically what he's saying. I'd pretend I was one of those deaf mutes. That way I wouldn't have to have any goddamn stupid, useless conversations with anybody. If anybody wanted to tell me something, they'd have to write it on a piece of paper and shove it over to me. And they'd get bored as hell doing that after a while, and then I'd be through with having conversations for the rest of my life. Everybody would just think I'm a poor deaf mute bastard and they'd just leave me alone. They'd let me put gas and oil in their stupid cars and they'd pay me a salary and all for it, and I'd build me a little cabin somewhere with the dough I'd made and live there for the rest of my life. God, this kid is so idealistic for such a little piece of shit. I was trying to say it in a more classy, elegant way, but I'd build me a little cabin somewhere with the dough I made and live there for the rest of my life. I'd build it right near the woods, but not right in them because I'd want it to be sunny as hell all the time. I'd cook all my own food, and later on, if I wanted to get married or something, I'd meet this beautiful girl that was also a deaf mute, and we'd get married. She'd come and live in my cabin with me, and if she wanted to say anything to me, she'd have to write it on a goddamn piece of paper like everybody else. If we had any children, we'd hide them somewhere. We could buy them a lot of books and teach them how to read and write by ourselves. Okay, so this is kind of confirming my assumption of Holden being a doomsday prepper incel early version of Patrick Bateman. I got excited as hell thinking about it, I really did. I knew the part about pretending I was a deaf mute was crazy, but I liked thinking about it anyway. But I really decided to go out west and all. All I wanted to do first was say goodbye to old Phoebe. So all of a sudden, I ran like a madman across the street. Damn near got killed doing it, if you want to know the truth. No, you didn't. No, you didn't, you fucking liar. And I went into the stationery store and I bought a pad and pencil. I figured I'd write her a note, telling her where to meet me so I could say goodbye to her and give her back her Christmas dough. And then I'd take the note up to her school and get somebody in the principal's office to give it to her. But I just put the pad and pencil in my pocket and started walking fast as hell up to her school. I was too excited to write the note in the stationery store. I walked fast because I wanted her to get the note before she went home for lunch. and I didn't have any too much time. I knew where her school was, naturally, because I went there myself when I was a kid. When I got there, it felt funny. I wasn't sure I'd remember what it was like inside, but I did. It was exactly the same as it was when I went there. They had that same big yard inside that was always sort of dark with those cages around the light bulbs so they wouldn't break if they got hit with a ball. And they had those same white circles painted all over the floor for games and stuff. And those same old basketball rings without any nets. Just the backboards and the rings. You know, for as rich as the Caulfields are, you'd think they'd go to a school where the basketball hoops have nets. Nobody was around at all, probably because it wasn't recess period and it wasn't lunchtime yet. All I saw was one little kid, a colored kid, on the way to the bathroom. He had one of those wooden passes sticking out of his hip pocket, the same way we used to have, to show that he had permission and all to go to the bathroom. I was still sweating, but not so bad anymore. I went over to the stairs and sat down on the first step, took out the pad and the pencil that I'd bought. The stairs had the same smell that they used to have when I went there, like somebody just taking a leak on them. School stairs always smell like that. Anyway, I sat there and wrote this note. Dear Phoebe, I can't wait around till Wednesday anymore, so I will probably hitchhike out west this afternoon. Meet me at the Museum of Art near the door at 12:15 if you can, and I will give you your Christmas dough back. I didn't spend much. Love, Holden. Her school was practically right near the museum. And you know what, this letter doesn't sit right with me because he promised his sister that he was going to go to the fucking play. This is making me very angry at Holden. Her school was practically right near the museum, and she had to pass it on her way home for lunch anyway, so I knew she could meet me all right. Then I started walking up the stairs to the principal's office so I could give the note to somebody that would bring it to her in her classroom. I folded it about 10 times so nobody would open it. You can't trust anybody in a goddamn school, but I knew they'd give it to her if I was her brother and all. While I was walking up the stairs though, all of a sudden, I thought I was gonna puke again. Only I didn't. I sat down for a second, and then I felt better, but while I was sitting down, I saw something that drove me crazy. Somebody had written "fuck you" on the wall. It drove me damn near crazy. I thought about how Phoebe and all the other little kids would see it, and how they'd wonder what the hell it meant. And then finally some dirty kid would tell them, all cockeyed naturally, what it meant, and how they'd all think about it and maybe even worry about it for a couple of days. I kept wanting to kill who'd ever written it. I figured it was some perverty bum that sneaked into school late at night to take a leak or something and then wrote it on the wall. I kept picturing myself catching him at it and how I'd smash his head on the stone steps till he was good and goddamn dead and bloody. But I knew too I wouldn't have the guts to do it. I knew that. And that made me even more depressed. I hardly even had the guts to rub it off the wall with my hand, if you want to know the truth. I was afraid some teacher would catch me rubbing it off and then would think I'd written it. But I rubbed it out anyway, finally, and then I went on up to the principal's office. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be proud of him for, like, recognizing these murderous, fucking super violent tendencies in himself, or if I should be proud of him for... Wait, how did I start that sentence? I'm high. Whatever. It's weird that he has these thoughts, but I'm a little bit proud of him for thinking about it, acknowledging it, and then doing the right thing anyway. That's kind of cool. That's a little bit of growth, I would say. Then I went up onto the principal's office. I think I fucked that sentence up pretty badly. The principal didn't seem to be around, but some old lady around 100 years old was sitting at a typewriter. I told her I was Phoebe Caulfield's brother in 4B1, and I asked her to please give Phoebe the note. I said it was very important because my mother was sick and wouldn't have lunch ready for Phoebe, and that she'd have to meet me and have lunch in a drugstore. She was very nice about it, the old lady. She took the note off me and called some other lady from the next office, and the other lady went to give it to Phoebe. And then the old lady that was around 100 years old and I shot the breeze for a little while. She was very nice, and I told her how I'd gone to school there too, and my brothers. She asked me where I go to school now, and I told her Pensy. Oh, she said Pensy was a very good school. Even if I'd wanted to, I wouldn't have had the strength to straighten her out. Because if she thought Pensy was a very good school, let her think it. You hate to tell new stuff to somebody around 100 years old. They don't like to hear it. Then, after a while, I left. It was funny. She yelled good luck at me the same way old Spencer did when I left Pensy. God, how I hate it when someone yells good luck at me when I'm leaving somewhere. It's depressing. I went down by a different staircase, and I saw another fuck you on the wall. I tried to rub it off with my hand again, but this one was scratched on with a knife or something. It wouldn't even come off. It's hopeless anyway. If you had 1,000,000 years to do it in, you couldn't even rub out half the fuck you signs in the world. It's impossible. I looked at the clock in the recess yard. It was only 20 to 12, so I had quite a lot of time to kill before I met old Phoebe. But I just walked over to the museum anyway. There wasn't any place else to go. I thought maybe I might stop in a phone booth and give old Jane Gallagher a buzz before I started bumming my way west, but I wasn't in the mood. When the fuck are you ever gonna be in the mood, bruh? You called her one time and got scared because her mom answered. You clearly are in the mood because you're always fucking talking about it. For one thing, I wasn't even sure she was home for vacation yet. So I just went over to the museum and hung around. While I was waiting around for Phoebe in the museum, right inside the doors and all, these two little kids came up to me and asked if I knew where the mummies were. I fucking love mummies, bruh. Mummies are tight. The one little kid that asked me had his pants open. I told him about it, so he buttoned them up right where he was standing talking to me. He didn't even bother to go behind a post or anything. He killed me. I would have laughed, but I was afraid I'd feel like vomiting again, so I didn't. Where are the mummies, fella? The kid said again. Do you know? I horsed around with the two of them a little bit. The mummies? What are they? You know, the mummies, them dead guys that get buried in them tombs and all? Tombs. That killed me. He meant tombs. How do you know he meant tombs? He might have meant cartoons. There's definitely mummies in cartoons. Have you ever seen Scooby-Doo? How come you two guys aren't in school? No school today, the kid that did all the talking said. He was lying, sure as I'm alive, the little bastard. I didn't have anything to do though till old Phoebe showed up, so I helped them find the mummies. Boy, I used to know exactly where they were, but I hadn't been in that museum in years. You two guys so interested in mummies? Yeah. Can't your friend talk? He ain't my friend, he's my brother. Can't he talk? I looked at the one that wasn't doing any talking. Can't you talk at all? Yeah, I don't feel like it. Finally, we found the place where the mummies were, and we went in. You know how the Egyptians buried their dead? Do you? Come on, ribbity. Oh yeah, trying to get through the finale without one? No. You know how the Egyptians buried their dead? Nah. Well, you should. It's very interesting. They wrapped their faces up in these cloths that were treated with some kind of secret chemical. That way, they could be buried in their tombs for thousands of years and their faces wouldn't rot or anything. Nobody knows how to do it except the Egyptians, even modern science. To get where the mummies are, you had to go down this very narrow sort of hall with stones on the side that they'd taken right out of the pharaoh's tomb and all. It was very spooky, and you could tell the two hotshots I was with wasn't enjoying it too much. They stuck close as hell to me, and the one that didn't talk at all was practically holding on to my sleeve. Let's go, he said to his brother. I seen him already. Come on, hey. He turned around and beat it. He's got a yellow streak a mile wide. So long. And he beat it too. I was the only one left in the tomb then. That seems like lazy writing to me too. I don't know. I'm being too critical. This is scary. Okay, I'm gonna leave. Yeah, he's always scared. Alright, bye. The whole reason y'all came was for the mummies. Y'all got scared on the walk to the mummies? Feel like this was just to move the plot. Don't you trick me, J.D. Salinger. I was the only one left in the tomb then. I sort of liked it in a way. It was so nice and peaceful. Then, all of a sudden, you'd never guess what I saw on the wall. Another fuck you. It was written with a red crayon or something, right under the glass part of the wall, under the stones. That's the whole trouble. You can't ever find a place that's nice and peaceful, because there isn't any. You may think there is, but when you get there, when you're not looking, somebody will sneak up and write "fuck you" right under your nose. Try it sometime. I think even if I ever die and they stick me in a cemetery and I have a tombstone and all, it'll say Holden Caulfield on it. And then what year I was born and what year I died. And then right under that, it'll say "fuck you." I'm positive, in fact. After I came out of the place where the mummies were, I had to go to the bathroom. I sort of had diarrhea, if you want to know the truth. I didn't mind the diarrhea part too much, but something else happened. When I was coming out of the can right before I got out the door, when I was coming out of the can right before I got to the door, I sort of passed out. I was lucky though. I mean, I could have killed myself when I hit the floor, but all I did was sort of land on my side. You're so fucking dramatic, bro. It was a funny thing though, I felt better after I passed out. I really did. My arms sort of hurt from where I fell, but I didn't feel so damn dizzy anymore. It was about 10 after 12 or so then, so I went back and stood by the door and waited for old Phoebe. I thought about how it might be the last time I'd ever see her again. Any of my relatives, I mean. I figured I'd probably see them again, but not for years. I might come home when I was about 35. I figured in case somebody got sick and wanted to see me before they died, but that would be the only reason I'd leave my cabin and come back. I even started picturing how it would be when I came back. I knew my mother'd get nervous as hell and start to cry and beg me to stay home and not go back to my cabin, but I'd go anyway. I'd be casual as hell. I'd make her calm down, and then I'd go over to the other side of the living room and take out the cigarette case and light a cigarette, cool as all hell. I'd ask them all to visit me sometime if they wanted to, but I wouldn't insist or anything. What I'd do, I'd let old Phoebe come out and visit me in the summertime, and on Christmas vacation and Easter vacation. And I'd let DB come out and visit me for a while if he wanted a nice quiet place for his writing, but he couldn't write any movies in my cabin. Only stories and books. I'd have this rule that nobody could do anything phony if they visited me. If anybody tried to do anything phony, they couldn't stay. What do you think, man? Are these the last two phonies of the book? Is the phony counter finally written in stone at the number of 48? See if we can get any more on the way. We only got about 5 pages left. All of a sudden, I looked at that clock in the check room, and it was 25 of 1. I began to get scared that maybe that old lady in the school had told that other lady not to give Phoebe my message. I began to get scared that maybe she'd told her to burn it or something. It really scared the hell out of me. I really wanted to see Phoebe before I hit the road. I mean, I had her Christmas dough and all. Finally, I saw her. I saw her through the glass part of the door. The reason I saw her, she had my crazy hunting hat on. You could see that hat about 10 miles away. I went out the doors and started down these stone stairs to meet her. The thing I couldn't understand, she had this big suitcase with her. She was just coming across 5th Avenue and she was just dragging this goddamn big suitcase with her. She could hardly drag it. When I got up closer, I saw that it was my old suitcase. The one I used to use when I was at Wooten. I couldn't figure out what the hell she was doing with it. "Hi," she said when she got up close. She was all out of breath from that crazy suitcase. I think I'm tearing up a little bit because I know what Phoebe's doing. Holy fuck, this is a good book. I thought maybe you weren't coming. What the hell's in that bag? I don't need anything. I'm just going the way I am. I'm not even taking the bags I got at the station. What the hell you got in there? She put the suitcase down. My clothes. I'm going with you. Can I? Okay? What? I almost fell over when she said that. I swear to God I did. Got sort of dizzy and I thought I was gonna pass out or something again. I took them down the back elevator so Charlene wouldn't see me. It isn't heavy. All I have in it is 2 dresses and my moccasins and my underwear and socks and some other things. Feel it. It isn't heavy. Feel it once. Can't I go with you, Holden? Can't I, please? No. Shut up. I thought I was gonna pass out cold. I mean, I didn't mean to tell her to shut up and all, but I thought I was gonna pass out again. Why can't I? Please, Holden? I won't do anything. I'll just go with you, that's all. I won't even take my clothes with me if you don't want me to. I'll just shut up. You can't take anything because you're not going. I'm going alone, so shut up. Please, Holden, please let me go. I'll be you're not going. Now shut up. Give me that bag. I took the bag off of her. I was almost all set to hit her. I thought I was gonna smack her for a second. I really did. She started to cry. I thought you were supposed to be in a play at school. I thought you were supposed to be Benedict Arnold in the play and all. I said it very nasty. What do you want to do? Not be in the play, for God's sake? That made her cry even harder. I was glad. All of a sudden, I wanted her to cry till her eyes practically dropped out. I almost hated her. I think I hated her most because she wouldn't be in that play anymore if she went away with me. Come on. I started up the steps to the museum again. I figured what I'd do was I'd check the crazy suitcase she'd brought in the I figured what I'd do was I'd check the crazy suitcase is not a fucking word. Say the right word, you idiot. Come on. I started up the steps to the museum again. I'd figured what I'd do was I'd check the crazy suitcase she'd brought into the check room, and then she could get it again at 3 o'clock after school. I knew she couldn't take it back to school with her. Come on now, I said. She didn't go up the steps with me though. She wouldn't come with me. I went up anyway though, and I brought the bag in the check room and I checked it. And then I came down again. She was still standing there on the sidewalk, but she turned her back on me when I came up to her. She can do that. She can turn her back on you when she feels like it. I'm not going away anywhere. I changed my mind, so stop crying and shut up. The funny part was, she wasn't even crying when I said that. I said it anyway though. Come on now. I'll walk you back to school. Come on, you'll be late. She wouldn't answer me or anything. I sort of tried to get hold of her old hand, but she wouldn't let me. She kept turning around on me. Did you have your lunch? You had your lunch yet? I asked her. She wouldn't answer me. All she did was, she took off my red hunting hat, the one I gave her, and practically chucked it right in my face. Then she turned her back on me again. It nearly killed me, but I didn't say anything. I just picked it up and stuck it in my coat pocket. Come on, hey, I'll walk you back to school. I'm not going back to school. I didn't know what to say when she said that. I just stood there for a couple of minutes. You have to go back to school. You want to be in that play, don't you? You want to be Benedict Arnold, don't you? No. Sure you do. Certainly you do. Come on. Come on now, let's go. In the first place, I'm not going away anywhere. I told you. I'm going home. I'm going home as soon as you go back to school. First, I'm going to go down to the station and get my bags, and then I'm going to go straight. I said I'm not going back to school. You can do whatever you want to do, but I'm not going back to school, so shut up. It was the first time she ever told me to shut up. It sounded terrible. God, it sounded terrible. It sounded worse than swearing. She still wouldn't look up at me either. And every time I sort of put my hand on her shoulder or something, she wouldn't let me. Listen, do you want to go for a walk? You want to go take a walk down to the zoo? If I let you not go back to school this afternoon and go for a walk, will you cut this crazy stuff? She wouldn't answer me, so I said it over again. If I let you skip school this afternoon and go for a little walk, will you cut out the crazy stuff? Will you go back to school tomorrow like a good girl? I may not. Then she ran right the hell across the street without even looking to see if any cars were coming. She's a madman sometimes. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. That was I think it hit me really close because there have been a lot of times where I sort of unconditionally have that sort of loyalty to the same people who are so easily capable of packing everything up, abandoning all promises, and leaving me with a note and less than an hour to prepare. I sort of feel like I'm one of those that's super easy to give up on, so it sucks to know that Holden was even considering that when he could tell how much Phoebe cared about him and probably needs him around. You know what I'm saying? I don't think I expected to cry at all on the podcast, let alone this fucking early, but my God, man. She ran right the hell across the street without even looking to see if any cars were coming. She's a madman sometimes. I didn't follow her though. I knew she'd follow me. So I started walking downtown towards the zoo on the park side of the street. And she started walking downtown on the other goddamn side of the street. She wouldn't look over at me at all, but I could tell she was probably watching me out of the corner of her crazy eye to see where I was going and all. Anyway, we kept walking that way, all the way to the zoo. The only thing that bothered me was when a double-decker bus came along, because then I couldn't see across the street and I couldn't tell where the hell she was. But when we got to the zoo, I yelled over to her, "Phoebe, I'm going to the zoo, come on now." She wouldn't look at me, but I could tell she heard me. When I started down the steps to the zoo, I turned around and saw she was crossing the street and following me and all. There weren't too many people in the zoo, because it was sort of a lousy day, but there were a few around the sea lion's swimming pool and all. I started to go by, but old Phoebe stopped and made out like she was watching the sea lions get fed. A guy was throwing fish at them, so I went back. Figured it was a good chance to catch up with her and all. I went up and sort of stood behind her and sort of put my hands on her shoulders. But she bent her knees and slid out from me. She can certainly be very snotty when she wants to. She kept standing there while sea lions were getting fed, and I stood right behind her. I didn't put my hand on her shoulders again or anything, because if I had, she would have really beat it on me. Kids are funny. You have to watch what you're doing. She wouldn't walk right next to me when we left the sea lions, but she didn't walk too far away. She sort of walked on one side of the sidewalk and I walked on the other side. It wasn't too gorgeous, but it was better than having her walk about a mile away from me like before. We went up and watched the bears on that little hill for a while, but there wasn't much to watch. Only one of the bears was out, the polar bear. The other one, the brown one, was in his goddamn cave and wouldn't come out. All you could see was his rear end. There was a little kid standing next to me with a cowboy hat on practically over his ears. He kept telling his father, "Make him come out, Daddy, make him come out." I looked at old Phoebe, but she wouldn't laugh. You know kids when they're sore at you. They won't laugh or anything. After we left the bears, we left the zoo and crossed over this little street in the park. And then we went through one of those little tunnels that always smell from somebody taking a leak. Dude, this is the second time Holden's been like obsessed with piss smell. It's pretty funny to me. After we left the bears, we left the zoo and crossed over this little street in the park. And then we went through one of those little tunnels that always smell from somebody's taking a leak. People was just pissing wherever they wanted to in the 50s? Is that how it was? I don't know. I've never been to New York. It don't smell like piss in Atlanta. Certain places, I guess, but anyway. It was on the way to the carousel. Old Phoebe still wouldn't talk to me or anything, but she was still sort of walking next to me now. I took a hold of the belt at the back of her coat, just for the hell of it, but she wouldn't let me. She said, "Keep your hands to yourself if you don't mind." She was still sore at me, but not as sore as she was before. Anyway, we kept getting closer and closer to the carousel, and you could probably hear that nutty music it always plays. It was playing Oh Marie. It played that same song about 50 years ago when I was a kid. That's one nice thing about carousels. They always play the same songs. Another hyper obsession with nostalgia right there. "I thought the carousel was closed in the wintertime," old Phoebe said. It was the first time she practically said anything. She probably forgot she was supposed to be sore at me. Maybe because it's around Christmas. She didn't say anything when I said that. She probably remembered she was supposed to be sore at me. I don't think it's fair that you can just be a lazy writer because you're supposed to be a 17-year-old, but I hate that he does that so frequently. Anyway, sorry. Do you want to go for a ride on it? I knew she probably did. When she was a tiny little kid and Allie and DB and I used to go to the park with her, she was mad about the carousel. You couldn't get her off the goddamn thing. "I am too big." I thought she wasn't going to answer me, but she did. "No, you're not. Go on. I'll wait for you. Go on." We were right there then. There were a few kids riding on it, mostly very little kids, and a few parents were waiting around the outside, sitting on the benches and all. What I did was I went to the window where they sell the tickets and I bought old Phoebe a ticket and then I gave it to her. She was standing right next to me. "Here. Wait a second. Take the rest of your dough too. You keep it. Keep it for me. Please." That's depressing. When somebody says please to you. I mean, if it's Phoebe or somebody, that depressed the hell out of me, but I put the dough back in my pocket. "Aren't you gonna ride too?" she asked me. She was looking at me sort of funny. You could tell she wasn't too sore at me anymore. "Maybe I will next time. I'll watch you. You got your ticket?" "Yes." "Go ahead then. I'll be on this bench right over here. I'll watch you." I went over and sat down on this bench and she went and got on the carousel. She walked all around it. I mean, she walked once all the way around it, and then she sat on this big, brown, beat-up, old-looking horse. Then the carousel started. I watched her go around and around. There were only about 5 or 6 other kids on the ride, and the song the carousel was playing was "Smoke Gets in Your Eyes." It was playing it very jazzy and funny. All the kids kept trying to grab for the gold ring, and so was old Phoebe. And I was sort of afraid she'd fall off the goddamn horse, but I didn't say or do anything. The thing with kids is, if they want to grab the gold ring, you have to let them do it and not say anything. If they fall off, they fall off. But it's bad if you say anything to them. When the ride was over, she got off her horse and came over to me. "You ride once too this time." "No, I'll just watch you. I think I'll just watch." I gave her some more of her dough. "Here, get some more tickets." She took the dough off of me. "I'm not mad at you anymore." "I know. Hurry up. The thing's gonna start again." Then, all of a sudden, she gave me a kiss. Then she held her hand out and said, "It's raining. It's starting to rain." I know. Then what she did, she damn near killed me. She reached in my coat pocket and took out my red hunting hat and put it on my head. "Don't you want it?" I said. "You can wear it a while." "Okay. Hurry up though, now you're gonna miss your ride. You won't get your own horse or anything." She kept hanging around though. "Did you mean it, what you said? You really aren't going anywhere? Are you really going home afterwards?" "Yeah. I meant it too. I wasn't lying to her. I really did go home afterwards." "Hurry up now, the thing's starting." She ran and bought her ticket and got back on the goddamn carousel just in time. Then she walked all the way around it until she got her own horse back. Then she got on it. She waved to me and I waved back. Boy, it began to rain like a bastard. In buckets, I swear to God. All the parents and mothers and everybody went over and stood right under the roof of the carousel so they wouldn't get soaked to the skin or anything, but I stuck around on the bench for a while. I got pretty soaking wet, especially my neck and my pants. My hunting hat really gave me quite a lot of protection in a way, but I got soaked anyway. I didn't care though. I felt so damn happy all of a sudden. The way old Phoebe kept going around and around, I was damn near bawling. I felt so damn happy, if you want to know the truth. I don't know why. It was just that she looked so damn nice the way she kept going around and around in her blue coat and all. God, I wish you could have been there. Chapter 26. Man, I knew. At the end of last episode, man, I was wondering how we could get some sort of decent resolution in 20 pages, given where we were in the story and how he was setting up the chapter with Mr. Antolini. What a crazy turn of events, man. What a powerful ending. What a great book. Chapter 26. That's all I'm gonna tell you about. I could probably tell you what I did after I went home and how I got sick and all and what school I'm supposed to go to next fall after I get out of here, but I don't feel like it. I really don't. That stuff doesn't interest me too much right now. A lot of people, especially this one psychoanalyst guy they have here, Keeps asking me if I'm gonna apply myself when I go back to school next summer. It's such a stupid question in my opinion. I mean, how do you know what you're gonna do till you do it? The answer is, you don't. I think I am, but how do I know? I swear it's a stupid question. DB isn't as bad as the rest of them, but he keeps asking me a lot of questions too. He drove over last Saturday with this English babe that's in this new picture he's writing. She was pretty affected, but very good looking. Anyway, one time when she went to the ladies' room way the hell down in the other wing, DB asked me what I thought about all this stuff I just finished telling you about. I didn't know what the hell to say. If you want to know the truth, I don't know what I think about it. I'm sorry I told so many people about it. All I know is, I sort of miss everybody I told about. Even old Stradlater and Ackley, for instance. I think I even miss that goddamn Maurice. It's funny. Don't ever tell anybody anything. If you do, you start missing everybody. Wow, man. Hell yeah. What a powerful way to end it too. Kind of reinforcing the idea that Holden is telling this story to all of us and really reframing that narrative and letting you know that the story still continues despite him wanting it to stay still so badly. I'm gonna smoke something real quick. I'm gonna come back and we're gonna do a little, just come back to my final thoughts on the book, and we're gonna end this episode. Well, that was quite an experience. What a book. I know I had my doubts along the way, and I was worried what all the hype was about. And there were tiny glimpses along the way that I was like, oh, okay, I get it, I get it. But there were also, I would say, more times when I was questioning the impact and I guess like flagpole nature of this book. Like, why is it so stuck in society? Why is it widely considered to be such a classic? But along with those criticisms and hesitations, I also had doubts about how important Holden actually is in the broad scope of like literary heroes. And what I realized is that Holden is not a hero. He's just a protagonist. At best, he's an anti-hero, right? Like, what he feels like is rebellious. It all just sounds like cries of help, to like the ears of like an aging hippie or whatever. But it's important to realize you don't have to like the main character, right? Like, just because that's the mainstay in the book, you're not meant to enjoy being around them, reading about them, identifying with them, whatever. And I think it's Holden is he's such an interesting Rorschach test. It's hard to criticize people who don't like him, because he's definitely a jerk, right? Like, he's, through most of the book, he's insulting his friends, all of his acquaintances. He lies a lot. He called Sally a pain in the ass, yells at her, calls her house drunk. I don't know, but if you listen to him, he's like just struggling to articulate feelings about like the fleeting goodness of the world. Like a pureness, a goodness that he can feel himself losing. You know, it's like a struggle. It's like an internal struggle that just makes him so volatile. And he can't find anybody else who recognizes these feelings in him. You know, we've seen, I don't know, probably close to a dozen interactions with multiple adults, peers, and, you know, people who I think on the surface we're supposed to look at as on a higher level of adulthood as Holden, and maybe should be offering him guidance, but nobody even recognizes that he's spiraling out of control, really, except for Phoebe. I think some of us realize it, obviously. I think we're supposed to, right? It's obvious that the reader is supposed to realize this, but I think I kind of see Holden like as a kindred spirit, right? Who, despite all of his phonies and lousy and goddamn, and I think he really loves life, and he really loves other people and what life could be if we were just a little bit better than we are. And I think the things that are so obnoxious about him are mostly just superficial, but the things to love about him are very deep. You know, every time I got kind of upset or angry with him, it was always a superficial sort of materialistic thing. And what irritated me was, how can you let that cause such a poisonous rage inside of you? And it's strange to me, but his love for his family, his desire to keep all the good things permanent, his unrealistic ideal of only capturing children who are about to fall over a cliff being his dream job. Like, these are all things to love about him, and they're rooted in a deep level of, I don't know if you want to get into chakras and whatever, but the things to love about him are not surface level at all. And to be fair, I kind of feel a little bit sorry for people who hate him so much. And J.D. Salinger, you know, he may not be a very technical writer, but he does an amazing job at like capturing the essence of a very young, terribly depressed teenager, and he has a very unique way of drawing you in and surprising you with these emotions that you weren't quite ready for. I think the book was an interesting and eye-opening look into the degradation of society, into misogyny and to misanthropy, and intellectual elitism. I think Holden thinking he's smarter or better than, classier than these other people was a big detriment to him as well. But at the beginning of this season, I used to love to say, I hate Catcher in the Rye. Holden is such a little whiny bitch, but I think I was only saying that because it sounded like mature and like tough or whatever. Like, I think maybe I was partaking in a little bit of intellectual elitism, right? Thinking that I know better than J.D. Salinger with the book he was trying to write, just because I didn't like the way it was written. So I think part of his idea was that being tough is not always better than being sensitive, and that being mature is not always better than being childlike. The Catcher in the Rye is a metaphor for saving people from the transition to adulthood. Once you run through the rye fields and off the cliff and you grow up, you lose things like naive trust, unconditional love, and an expectation of honesty from others. And society congratulates you. Well done. You grew up. You are now a tough, mature, cynical man like us. And what really knocks me out is a book that when you're all done reading it, you wish the author that wrote it was a terrific friend of yours, and you could call him up on the phone whenever you felt like it. That doesn't happen much, though. Check your shelf, baby. We'll see y'all next week. Season 3.